Let me just briefly welcome Rana Salman and Jair Bunzel. Rana, welcome to you. You are the Palestinian co-director of Combatants for Peace. You were born in Jerusalem, and before joining Combatants, you guided international tours in Israel, Palestine. Thank you very much. I know that you are working a lot these days, and so thank you very much that you are with us here tonight.
Thank you, Crystal, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for organizing this webinar. And I'm very glad to see this big number attending tonight. I feel it's very important to get our voices heard and to have this kind of conversation in these difficult times. So thank you again for organizing this, and I'm happy to be with you here tonight.
Yeah. And I also welcome your colleague Jair Bunzel. Jair, you were born in Israel. You even served in the Israeli army as a captain. And 6 years ago, you became a member of Combatants for Peace. And we might hear from you yourself what made you join the movement. Uh, Very warm welcome also to you, Jair. And maybe we can test your voice and you unmute yourself.
Yes, that helps. Thank you, everybody, for all the people who worked hard for this event to take place. And thank you for the big crowd that took the time to meet us tonight.
And let's get started. Jair, my first question will go right to you. Can you tell me a bit from which place are you joining this call today? And yeah, what was your story that made you being here with us today? So how come you joined Combatants for Peace?
I'm joining you from home. I live in the north, in the Galilee, about 40 kilometers from the border with Lebanon, and only 2 or 3 miles from one of the air bases of Israel, of the Israeli armed forces. So every once in a while, I hear the jets start or land on the way to the Gaza Strip or to South Lebanon or back. So if there are sometimes few moments where I don't read the news or don't follow WhatsApp about what is going on, I get immediate reminder from the airplanes that are flying around me. I joined the Combatants for Peace approximately 6 years ago. It was a trip that was organized by Combatants for Peace to meet Palestinians in the West Bank. And after that trip, a friend of mine, a neighbor here from the same little town that I live in the north called Kiryat Tiv'on, had asked me to join him and travel to the Jordan Valley and try to organize and find maybe Palestinian partners that will be willing to work together with us. And that was my first meeting with Palestinians and especially with the shepherds in the Jordan Valley. So this is how my work and my volunteering in Combatants for Peace had started.
Thank you, Jair. Thank you for sharing this. And stay safe tonight, at least you and your family. As you said, you're not far from where fighting also goes on. I would like to turn to you, Rana, and hear from you from where you are joining this call tonight, and also share your story, how it come you joined Combatants for Peace, and today even as a Palestinian co-director.
Sure. So I'm joining you from Bethlehem in the West Bank. And as you mentioned in the introduction, I was born in Jerusalem, but I have lived and I grew up in Bethlehem because when I was born, things were different here in the region. The reality was totally different. There were no checkpoints, no wall, and we could easily access Jerusalem and spend weekends like in Tiberias because of my father's work. But currently the facts on the ground have changed, and there are more restrictions on the movement. I joined Combatants for Peace about 3 years ago, and I learned about Combatants for Peace through my previous work in the tourism sector. I used to do alternative tourism, and in which we organized also meetings with the different initiatives and different speakers, so that international community can hear from both sides different perspectives about what's going on, because we believe that visiting this region and just visiting the holy sites and leaving, it doesn't give you the full experience of this place. We actually encourage people to meet what we call the living stones, which are the people who live here, and hear their stories and hear about the conflict and what is happening and see the facts on the ground, so that they can be our ambassadors when they go back and be like an eyewitness to what's happening and share the message with the world. So 3 years ago, like, the movement has been growing and they needed more. So I'm not an ex-combatant. That's how the movement has actually started, by ex-combatants, Israelis who have been serving in the Israeli army, and Palestinians who spent time in Israeli jail. And eventually, like, they realized that violence just breeds violence and it doesn't take us anywhere. There is no military solution for this conflict. So they decided to lay down their weapons and join their forces to resist the occupation and all oppressive systems and violence in the occupied territories and in Israel.
Thank you. Thank you, Rana. So we know a little bit about the two of you, our guest. Maybe you can add a few more things about it, because not everybody here knows about Combatants for Peace. You mentioned a bit about the moment, how you were founded. Maybe you can spend a few minutes giving us a picture of who is Combatants for Peace, how they started, and who you are today as an organization and a movement. And maybe Jair can add afterwards to that.
So yeah, as I mentioned, the movement was actually started in 2006 by ex-combatants, Israelis who served in the army, and Palestinian freedom fighters who spent time in jail. And afterwards, like, when the Palestinians heard about those ex-combatants who decided to refuse to serve in the army, they were actually like from the elite unit in the army, and that was quite a new phenomenon, like when it first happened. So they actually reached out to them to try to like have a conversation and see what's happening. So actually the first meetings of those ex-combatants took place in Beit Jala, very close to where our office is located today. And in the beginning, there was this mistrust between the two sides, because Palestinians were worried that this might be a trap. They could be maybe get arrested. Israelis as well, they were also scared to come to Area C, and like maybe the fear of being kidnapped or attacked. And these kind of meetings were filmed from the very beginning, so that everybody felt more safe, like to share their stories and feel more equal in a safe place. And from that moment, the creation of the movement actually started, and it kept growing. And today it doesn't only have ex-combatants, it's more open to everyone, and it's more inclusive, and everyone can be joining the movement as long as they believe in the values of nonviolence and our co-work and co-resistance together.
Thank you, Rana. Jair, is there maybe something to add, some activities you joined with Combatants you would like to share with us?
Yes, the activity that Combatants for Peace is doing, I will maybe divide that to pre-October 7th and after October 7th. So pre-October 7th, we were working in several directions. we were working with youth and the young Israelis in high schools, in pre-military programs, which gave us a chance to talk to Israelis before they joined the military service. For many of the Israelis, it was the first time for them to meet a Palestinian in person, hear his or her perspective, because one of the reasons that the conflict is ongoing for such a long time and that it's very difficult to see a different future is because the populations hardly ever see each other unless they are directly involved as soldiers or as Palestinians that are confronted by the Israeli soldiers. So a chance to give a chance to see each other without the context of weapon, violence, uniform, and all of that is extremely important. Another part of our activity is to try to influence the public opinion on three different levels. Two levels is, of course, the levels that are directly involved, which is the Israeli population and the Palestinian population, through media, through demonstrations, through organizing tours, and so on and so forth. And the third level that we try to influence the public opinion is abroad, participating in meetings like this, traveling to wherever people are willing to hear us, and so on. A different level of activity, which I personally found my, the place where I would like very much to invest my time is to be really on the ground, to see the situation, to meet Palestinians, either by bringing Israeli groups to see the reality or by supporting Palestinians. I will give one example out of many activities that was taking place previous to the 7th October, and that is to accompany shepherds, Palestinian shepherds in the Jordan Valley, who do not get a lot of attention from either Israeli or Palestinian, nor abroad. This is a little bit the backyard of the West Bank, and not many people are aware of the situation in the Jordan Valley. Maybe later I will elaborate a little bit on that. After the 7th of October, a lot of activity wasn't possible to continue. But after a few weeks of, I would say, shock, activists had started returning to the Jordan Valley, and today we have more activists that are accompanying shepherds, Palestinian shepherds in the Jordan Valley than we had before the 7th of October. So this is one positive development from the 7th of October. Another thing, which is seems like a contradiction, but that is the reality, is that we have to spend a lot of energy among ourselves within the Combatants for Peace movement to keep the movement relevant and to continue give people inside the movement the feeling that we can still talk to each other. We still want to hear each other's voice and see each other's faces. In the beginning, it was impossible to meet because traveling from the Palestinian territories into Israel or vice versa into Israel is almost never impossible. But vice versa from Israel into the Palestinian territories was very, very difficult. So a lot of meetings were held only electronically, like this one. And only later it was possible also to start meeting physically meetings. But there was a lot of energy, still a lot of energy that is invested in order just to keep the movement active, to encourage people to talk to each other, because there was a big gap, a big, I would say, misstrauen auf Deutsch. I forgot the English
Distrust.
Mistrust. Thank you very much. And there was a lot of energy that had to be invested in order to keep the people within the movement, Israeli and Palestinian, back on the track of meeting each other regularly, talking, exchanging views, even hearing and telling each other things that are not very pleasant. And it took a lot of energy to enable and convince us that yes, even it's a very hard time, even though we maybe have expectations from each other and we are not always able to fulfill our expectations, but it's still necessary to keep the dialogue active.
Thank you, Yair. This is really like a vivid picture of what Combatants for Peace is doing, and I'm again and again impressed how you're keeping up. And I mean, you're telling it's not easy for each one of you to keep going in these times since 7th of October, and that you're doing so, and that you even have more people engaging now is really impressive, especially if one follows like the mainstream media and sees what the general mood is, at least what I hear and read. Since you started, Yair, speaking also about, let's say, how you and the movement experienced the last, or let's say, more than 100 days, I would like to turn with this question maybe to Rana and hear from you. You live in Bethlehem. How did you and people around you in Bethlehem, what did it do to society, to family, friends, people you know and who might know also that you work with combatants? Yeah, with the escalation since October 7th. Can you share with us a few insights?
Yeah, of course. So as we know, the war is like happening in Gaza and all the eyes are on Gaza right now, but so much has been going on also in the West Bank, which is not mentioned a lot in the news, or there's not much focus about it. And since the beginning of the war, there has been so many arrests for Palestinians, and also many night raids into the Palestinian cities and refugee camps. Even just yesterday and today, there has been invasions to Tulkarem refugee camp and Nablus and Jenin. That areas, they have been experiencing this kind of invasions every night, almost every night. And since October 7th, there has been so many roadblocks. The checkpoints have been closed. All permits have been canceled. That's why one of the reasons why we couldn't meet is that because there has been so many closures around the city. The first few weeks after October 7th, we couldn't even reach to our office, which is located also in Area C. And that also made it very difficult for our movement. And one of also the reasons that what's happening right now also in the West Bank is that there is an economic crisis right now because of the cancellation of Palestinian permits. Many people have been working in Israel for the last few years, maybe over 200,000 Palestinian laborers. And right now they have lost their jobs since October 7th, and they do not have any other source of income. So right now people are struggling to pay their bills, to pay their house rents, and to pay for school tuitions, and even to buy groceries for their home. And the more this situation continues, the more people will get more desperate, and it will create more unfortunately, it will become more horrible in a few weeks, if we say. So there has been lots of difficulties, like living in the West Bank with everything that is happening. And continues also the sense of fear and instability and the stressful time that people have been living since that time, because everyone here is watching the news 24/7. This is part of our life right now, so people are scared and want to know when this will end and how it will end and what is going to happen. So people are afraid, and they are afraid for their families. And And it was a very difficult time, especially like last month, it was supposed to have Christmas celebrations, and I live in Bethlehem, it's the capital of Christmas, but unfortunately, there was no celebrations. We don't have any tourism at the moment, and there were no signs of festivities, because people are in still mourning and still grieving the loss of many innocent lives, and standing in solidarity also with the people in Gaza and what they are going through. So this is kind of like the situation right now in the West Bank. And for us at Combatants for Peace, we already have members that have family actually in Gaza. So I have two colleagues who have lost family members in Gaza because of the recent events. And thankfully, they continue to be part of the movement and they continue to be part of the conversations. And I'm very inspired by their courage and their commitment and their belief. And that's also like inspiring for us. And on the Israeli side, many people also have lost loved ones during the attacks of October 7th. And they have been attending funerals for a long time. And they still continue to be committed to nonviolence and to our joint work. So that's also very inspiring.
Thank you, Rana. Thank you for that. We've heard a lot now already about you and learned about Combatants for Peace. And I would like to turn briefly to you, Uwe, if there are first questions about what we heard so far.
Ja, es gibt eine ganz konkrete Anfrage an Jair. Er hat ja berichtet von den Schäfern im Jordantal. Und da wird gefragt, was arbeitet ihr mit den Schäfern im Jordantal jetzt konkret? Wie arbeitet ihr?
So the question is to Yair in concrete terms. You reported about your relationships with shepherds in the Jordan Valley. So my question to you is, how do you and what do you work with the shepherds in the Jordan Valley?
Our work with the shepherds in the Jordan Valley is going on for the last 4 years. And again, I will divide my answer to pre-7th of October and after 7th of October. Before the war had started, we were accompanying the shepherds in their herds. When they were going out in the morning with their goats and sheep, we would simply join them and walk together with them to the hills where they were herding their animals. And sometimes nothing would happen. We would be with them 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, just walking or sitting or accompanying them, drinking tea, and in the end of the day, returning with them to their homes. But every once in a while, we would have to stand there and try to protect them from two types of hostilities which were working together. One of them are the settlers that were living in different outposts not far near the settlements that were built by the Israeli government in the West Bank. In the Jordan Valley, the population is very small. Both the population of the Palestinians and the population of the settlers is a small population. There are only maybe a dozen settlements in the northern part of the Jordan Valley, which is a large territory. The entire Jordan Valley is a third of the West Bank. So the northern part is about half of that. And we are talking about even less than a dozen settlements and half a dozen of outposts of settlers who had built an outpost outside a settlement. And they live there, these Israelis, mostly in farms, agricultural farms. But the real aim of these outposts is not really to do agriculture, but to push as many Palestinians as possible out of as large as possible territories. What these settlers or outpost settlers do, they come either by foot or with the vehicles or on a horse, and they chase the sheep and the goats of the Palestinians away from from the hills where they were herding for already generations. The reason why they can do that is because they get support from all Israeli authorities, mainly the military, which is posted in different places in the Jordan Valley, like in the West Bank generally, but also any kind of bureaucratical mean is used in order to push Palestinians out of their territories, either declaring territories as firing zones, but in fact they are not used for firing zones. They are only used as a mean to prevent Palestinians from entering them, or declaring hills as nature reserves. But these nature reserves, the forbidding Palestinians to herd in the nature reserves only applies to Palestinians, but it does not apply to the Israeli settlers who herd their herds on the same territories. And as we know, in many cases, in different parts of the world today and in the past, once the bureaucracy is obliged to fulfill the policy of the government, there are so many ways to do that. And in the West Bank generally, and in the Jordan Valley specifically, it's very easy because you have two sets of rules, of laws, one for the Israeli settlers who are under the Israeli civil law, like myself, inside Israel, and another set of laws that is the military law that applies on the Palestinian population. So this is the first and the strongest proof that we are actually facing a situation of an apartheid, two sets of rules to two different populations on the same surface. After 7th of October, the level of aggression and the level of violence that was practiced against the Palestinian shepherds had increased dramatically. Several reasons. One is that the entire focus was on the war in Gaza and on the battles and the fear of escalating in the northern front with Lebanon. So nobody was paying attention. Even before that, there was not a lot of focus on what is going on in Jordan Valley. But places like Hebron, Tulkarem, Jenin, other places in the West Bank did come to the public opinion, both in Israel and in Palestine and abroad. But ever since the war started, almost nobody is talking about what is going on in the West Bank and specifically the Jordan River. So the level of aggression that was practiced against the Palestinians had jumped dramatically. Another reason is that many of the settlers were called to the military reserve units. So they are not just carrying a pistol in their belt. They are now wearing uniform, and they are carrying the weapon, the automatic weapon M16 or whatever it is supplied by the Israeli military. The motivation of the settlers and the motivation of the soldiers that are stationed in the West Bank and in the Jordan Valley specifically had dramatically raised to attack and use whatever they can to make the life of Palestinians and Palestinian shepherds specifically even harder than it was before. So we found ourselves in a situation that we are not only forced to come in the morning in hope to have few hours of quiet herding before they return to their homes. Now we are staying with the Palestinians 24/7. Obviously, we don't have a large number of volunteers that enable us to stay with all Palestinian communities 24/7. So we have to send as many people as we can, usually 4, 6, or 8 people in every shift, maybe a third of the day or half a day. And they are trying to help a community here where a tractor was confiscated by the military. Go somewhere else and try help a water container that is stopped in a blockade, preventing by the Israeli military, preventing the families to get access to water because they are not connected to the water grid, and of course not to electricity grid, and so on and so forth. So we jungle, sorry, between different tasks as we get calls from Palestinians, either again staying with the herds and trying to help them complete few hours without being pushed away from the territories, or going from one community to the other and trying to support as much as we can.
Thank you, Jair, for explaining this in such a good way. I remember myself that still in summer there was much more public attention in Germany about with what was going on in the north of the West Bank, and it's pretty absent at the moment. I heard from Uwe that there is one more question to you, so I will turn to him.
Ja, Sie können beide beantworten, Rana oder Jair, möglichst kurz. Auch die Fragen sind kurz. Briefly, please. Einmal könnt ihr was sagen zur Anzahl der Mitglieder und wie die öffentliche Reaktion auf eure Arbeit sowohl in Israel als auch in Palästina ist.
Maybe Rana, you can answer that after the
We have to
translation.
wait for the translation.
Yes,
Yes.
There are
I hear the translation.
brief questions, either Rana or Yair. You are free to give answers to these very brief questions. First, the numbers of your membership. How many members do you have in your organization? First question. Second question, what has been the public reaction to the work of your organization, both in Israel and Palestine?
So for the number of members, it's hard to actually to have an exact number because it's a movement and it's activists. It's not like an organization with staff. We already have staff, which is about like 17 staff members, but like for activists and members, it's hard to count. And our activists are not only in Palestine and Israel. We also have German friends of Combatants for Peace. We have Swiss friends of CFP, and we also have American friends of Combatants for Peace. So I would like to believe that we have a big global movement of activists who support the work of combatants. And regarding your second question about I think the atmosphere you mentioned, like in Palestine and Israel, or what's the second part was?
Yes, the reactions of the public. What have been the voices? How did they react to your work?
Yeah, so for a long time, it's like our work is for a long time has been challenging because basically we're going into a different path, which is that is not very common here, because for Palestinians we are sometimes we're accused of normalization because we are dealing with the Israeli partners. For Israelis, they are also accused of being traitors because they are working with the enemy. And this has been going on for many years. That's why it's very difficult to do what we do while our societies are opposing us so much. And you can imagine during this time of crisis how our work became even more difficult because after October 7th, there has been a huge gap between the two communities. There has been mistrust, there has been fear, and we keep seeing this incitement for violence and revenge and hatred and the dehumanization of the other. What we're trying to do is always connect and try to bridge the two communities together. And that's what we have been doing for many years since the creation of the movement. I'm happy to say that we have built a solid foundation of a joint community of activists and members who are like more like a family members right now. And they act all together. And that's also, we're creating kind of like a different model, how peace can look like in the future, because we're actually embodying that right now in the movement as a joint community of Palestinians and Israelis. And we continue to have these kind of opposing voices. In Israel, we have been experiencing the most right-wing government in history. And even now, it takes a lot of courage for Israelis, like to go down to the streets and protest and ask for ceasefire. And they have been attacked by their own community because of that. The same also in Palestine. It's very difficult to actually speak against the resistance and what is happening, and even like making posts on social media, because there's the fear of getting arrested or having anything on your phone. Many people got arrested because of even liking a page or something that is in the opposite way. And there's also this mistrust and of the Palestinian government. People have lost hope, and they feel like they are kind of like isolated in a way, and there is no support. And we feel there's the need of the international intervention to kind of solve this conflict in a way.
Thank you, Rana. Maybe we come to a kind of outlook, what can be like steps forward later on. And let me briefly ask Yair maybe if he wants to add something about how Combatants for Peace is being perceived in Israeli society in these days.
The way I see it is that there are at least two different worlds that not necessarily connect or communicate to each other. One of them is the real world, what I'm used to, as I'm older than Rana, and I remember the days that we did not have social media. That is for me the real world. But like everybody else, I see the other world, the electronic world, and I think that these two worlds are not necessarily on the same level of reality, but that is maybe just my old-fashioned way of looking at things. And as I am very have very little connection to social media, I don't get a lot of the hatred that is very easy to pour on somebody in Facebook and in Instagram and so on and so forth, or also to be exposed to the horrors of what happened on the 7th of October and to the horrors that happen right now in Gaza. So I think from that perspective, my life is a little bit easier. My connection are to the people that I see, sometimes on Zoom, but I still see them, and they are not behind some sort of a name in Facebook or in other social media where there are no limits to the level of aggression and hate that you can put because you are hidden behind some fake identity.
Thank you, Jair. By the way, we have already 270 people with us in this conversation. Thank you to all of you for joining. And as we have many guests, we also have many questions. And I would like to turn to our other colleague who collected questions, Ralph, and see what kind of questions he got about what you told us about so far.
Ja, eine Frage schließt direkt an das an, was gerade genannt worden ist, nämlich an die Widersprüche und die Anfeindungen, denen ihr ausgesetzt seid. Die Frage ist, wie geht ihr persönlich mit diesen Anfeindungen um? Und wie könnt ihr euch als Mitglieder von Combatants for Peace gegenseitig stärken?
So this question is a direct follow-up to one of your last remarks when you reported on the hostilities and animosities you are faced with. How do you deal with those offenses, foul language and hostilities And how can you support each other by reinforcing or encouraging yourselves mutually?
Whoever wants to start, the two of you.
Anna, would you like to start?
Okay. So how do we deal with these kind of things? It's a good question, and we try to stay connected to our community, our joint community that we created, because we feel we belong to this sort of community, and that's what gives us like courage and hope to continue working and doing what we do. Because we can see a different future, and we see that it's possible because we are kind of living it. And I know like maybe I'm privileged because I have already met the other in, and I'm working now with Israelis, and it's been a different experience for me. But if I compare myself to other people like maybe in my family or like other Palestinians, they never had actually the chance to meet an Israeli. And that's also what creates this division between the two communities, because we don't have these chances to meet each other. And it's not only like an actual separation by a wall and checkpoints and all of that, but there is also like a separation in the mind because of all these kind of stereotypes that we have been fed like all over the years about the other. And what we like, for example, for me, myself, what I knew about an Israeli was either like a soldier or like a settler, and both like looked scary to me. So I never had I never met actually an Israeli here. The first time I met an Israeli was actually in Germany, to be honest. And that's why we try to create these kind of safe places for people to actually meet and have conversations, and not only stop at dialogue, because we need to do action together. And that's what's different about Competence for Peace. It's that we do joint action together so that we can also change this reality and create a better future for both sides.
Thank you. Jair, you want to add?
Yes, from my point of view, there are a couple of things. First of all, we are dealing with a situation where people are in daily danger of losing their lives in a war scenario, or losing or being hurt or being arrested and losing their freedom in a very daily situation where a lot of their rights are being taken away. So taking that into consideration, I think it's almost, for me, not an issue to say what kind of risk I take on me by speaking up against injustice on one hand, and also against the interest of my own society in Israel. So what is standing here on the line is far more important than my maybe some inconvenience or some bad experience that I might have if somebody doesn't like what I have to say. It's just not even comparable. So this is the way I see it. I'm not risking really anything serious compared to the risk or the danger that is on the line here. So it's for me, it's a non-issue.
Thank you. And maybe as a moderator, whenever I met members of Combatants for Peace, I had the feeling that you are able to have really meaningful conversations amongst each other. And is this like inner strength you get from your groups as a group that makes you also have the strength to speak out to others? Can you like connect to this impression?
Very much. I think this is also connected to the question that was raised earlier. What's the number of the activists? Yes, there is a large number of people in Israel, in Palestine, and around the world that support us. But in the actual meetings or in the actual activities that we do, we don't find more than sometimes few dozens, or at a big event, 100 or 200 people. And this only happens once in a while. But it doesn't make the importance or the feeling that you are doing something valuable smaller just because the number of people that are with you is small versus the number that oppose what you do. It doesn't mean that because the number of people who think I'm wrong, it gives them any, what they say doesn't have more weight just because their number is larger. And history is full of examples of few people that were doing the right thing, and we are convinced that we are doing the right thing. And even if we don't see the fruits of what we do today, and especially in the last 3 months, we have went many steps away from the target of achieving some sort of a dialogue, some sort of hope for a better future. But it doesn't mean that we are wrong. It means that we will have to wait longer. And unfortunately, the number of people that will lose their lives is even higher than what we thought would be necessary before we reach a better future. But it doesn't say, I never lost hope, and I never thought that what we are doing is wrong because of what happened in the 7th October. And because we have a small but very dedicated group of people, it gives me, and I'm sure everybody else, a lot of strength, because you have a group around you which is not big, but is very convinced and very supportive.
Thank you. In the next step, I would like to look a bit ahead with you, but before we do that, I guess that Ralph received more questions about what you are doing now and who you are. Maybe we can take 2 more questions from you before we move on.
Dein Verdacht ist berechtigt, Christoph. Es sind eine Reihe von Fragen und ich will mal 2 aus und bitte erstmal alle anderen um Entschuldigung, dass ich nicht deren Frage auswähle, zumindest nicht jetzt gerade. Die eine Frage, die gestellt worden ist auch nochmal nach Unterstützung in der jeweiligen Community. Gibt es andere Initiativen, mit denen ihr Kontakt habt und die euch unterstützen? Das ist die erste Frage. Und die zweite Frage ist, beide Referentinnen sind wohl eher Mitglieder einer gemäßigten Glaubensrichtung. Liegt das Problem aber nicht bei den religiös Radikalen? Was kann man in dieser Hinsicht tun?
Christoph, your suspicion is well founded. There are so many questions that have arrived at my desk. I select just 2 of them. Sorry to all the others who have asked their questions, but let me pick 2 questions. The first one is, are there other forms of support in your respective communities apart from the Combatants for Peace? And the second question, both speakers, both Rana and Yair, seem to belong to a rather moderate wing in your respective religious communities. But apparently the problem rests rather with the radical wings of your communities. What can one do to tackle this problem of radicals in the radical wings in the religious communities?
So 2 questions. Did you get the questions right, Rana?
Yes. The first one, again.
Are there other movements, organizations
Yeah,
you
yeah.
connect with?
Okay, now I remember. Sorry. Yes, it's we're part of we're not here alone. We also have a coalition of different peace organizations, different human rights organizations, and actually, um, just tonight we have a protest in Tel Aviv, and it's in coalition with 20 other organizations working in the same field. And this is how we feel more powerful, because we have many like-minded organizations around us. We have also like a community that work in the same field and believe in the same values. And we feel when we act actually together, we deliver the message like really well. And we feel not alone because we're part of this peace camp in a way. And it gives us courage and a way to continue. And for the extremist community, we feel, or personally, I feel like education plays a big role in what we do. And we try to raise awareness and recruit new people actually to our educational programs to learn about the conflict and to learn about nonviolence, about other models around the world, how nonviolence actually worked to solve these conflicts. And we do many lectures for our different audiences with two speakers, Palestinian and Israeli, who share their personal stories. And those speakers have actually our ex-combatants. They actually were part of this active conflict for a long time, and they know that the results out of it and how we continue to be stuck in the same circle of violence, and that there is no military solution for this conflict. So we try to share our experiences with different students and different communities, and even our alumni that from our educational programs. They continue also to do these kind of lectures and other events, also to share their experiences, because they joined many of our also like alternative tours in the West Bank, in the Area C, and they have seen what's been happening. They joined many of our activities. So it's in every society there is like extremists, and we feel like the way we can like present our messages through education, and it takes a long time, and but it's more fruitful way to reach to those people, and through also our advocacy work.
Thank you. Jair, is there anything you would like to add to this on these two questions?
I would like to refer to the second question. I think there is a strong sentiment in the Western world that accuses Islam for the level of brutality that we have seen in the 7th of October. But I think it's a very shallow way of looking at things. And my point is that you can take any religion and use it in a very violent, in a way that is very much contradicting the fundamentals of the same religion. We have seen it in the past in Christianity. Fortunately, we don't see it, or very few cases nowadays. But if you look at what is going on among some of the Israeli settlers, some of the Jewish religious settlers in places like Hebron or Jerusalem, where they are using the Jewish religion together with a high level of nationalist and even fascist ideology. So this is the proof that you can take any religion and use it or misuse it and make terrible results and cause terrible results in the name of God or in the name of that religion. So the problem is not in Islam itself, and the problem is not in Judaism or Christianity or any other religion. It's so obvious that it's almost embarrassing to say. The problem is what people are doing with these values, not the values themselves.
Thank you. allow me to try to look ahead, and it might be difficult, and you see what you can answer. I mean, we have the war in Gaza is still ongoing, and there's, as far as I know, no perspective at the moment for a ceasefire or any kind of soon end to the violence. And this is also true for, I assume, for the West Bank and all the potential of further escalation the conflict has. And you told us a bit what you're doing in the Jordan Valley with Combatants for Peace. Rana, you just mentioned the demonstration going on in Tel Aviv tonight. So my question is a bit, it is really challenging. You cannot say really what is going to happen and you can achieve tomorrow or next week. How are you planning your your actions in these times as combatants for peace? And yeah, what is your plan, let's say, for the next weeks to come? What are you going to focus on, if you can say so? What is important now to do for you?
It is indeed very, very difficult to use the terms plans. I don't think I have a plan. My plan is to open the internet tomorrow morning and see that there is a ceasefire, or to see that there is any negotiation about returning the hostages back to Israel, or at least not read the horrific numbers of dead on Palestinian side in Gaza, which are enormous numbers, and also the numbers of dead Israeli soldiers killed in the war in Lebanon, and to see that the tension in the border with Lebanon is getting smaller, and there is some talks going on, hopefully with international intermediate, to bring the sides to some sort of a dialogue to solve the problems, not by continuing using weapon against each other. So it's more like hopes than real plans. On the other hand, in order not to be totally so pessimistic, I do plan that we will continue to have support from international and from people abroad. I want to say that United States and Germany are the two largest populations that we get their attention. And I think this is one, give us hope and strength to continue what we do. And two, also on a practical level, I think that the pressure that is put on the Israeli government in different elements of what is going on in the three fronts, the one in the south, Gaza, the one in the center, the West Bank, and the north, at the border between Lebanon and Israel. On these three difficult levels, the international influence had become bigger after the 7th of October than it was before that, because the fragility of the situation and how quickly it can escalate into a horror, I think, had become clear to many people around the world. So I think there is a bigger interest now in getting involved, and also because the sides themselves have proven again and again that if you leave the two of us alone, blood is just pouring like crazy. So I think maybe the international community has more interest and more motivation to step in and to be more active in this conflict.
Thank you. This is also why we're having this event. Before I turn the same question to Rana, I would ask Uwe to add maybe one more question on this issue we're talking about right now.
Ja, es gibt eine ganz konkrete Nachfrage, die dazu passt. Wie erlebt ihr an vielen Stellen das Schweigen in Deutschland, dass nicht von deutscher Seite genügend und aktiver die Stimme erhoben wird? Und konkret dazu, was können vielleicht deutsche Friedensgruppen noch intensiver an Unterstützung für euch tun?
These questions are directly tying up with what you have just been saying. The question is, how do you experience the silence in Germany? What do you make of it? And the second question, how could German peace movements initiatives raise their voices? Why is there so much silence, and what would you wish to hear from Germany, and specifically from German peace groups, peace initiatives?
Thank you. Rana, I would turn over to you first.
I think for the first part about why Germany is still silent, I think this is more a question for Germans to answer. But what we hope for, I think, from Germany is that not only from Germany, but also like from the international community, is that to push forward and to support a political solution for this region. And we urge them not to choose to be pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, but to stand for a just solution that will benefit both societies. And we know that Germany is so powerful, and you can't be neutral in such in what is happening in this region right now. And we know that Germany can play a big role, like to change the reality here. And we need its intervention, but in a way that can benefit both societies, and to look at both sides with equally. And that's what is needed right now. And I'm sad, like from the position of Germany for the last few weeks, we were hoping for more standing with both communities here to end the war and to have a ceasefire. But unfortunately, for the last 100 days, we have been going and experiencing this war. And it's not in the interest of Palestinians or Israelis. And we want the end of this violence and an end to this bloodshed, and to call for a release of all the hostages from both sides, and to work towards a solution. Because otherwise, every few years, we will just have to experience the same violence again and again. And it's just not sustainable. And what we need from Germany and also the international community is to take their roles to actually push forward for a political solution here.
You. Maybe before I get back to you with another question, Rana, I would ask Jair if he wants to add something on these two questions from the audience.
I will be less polite when I answer my perspective. Why is the German voice not heard as much as we expected it? And when I say we, both sides, the Palestinians expect Germany to speak louder against what the Israel is doing in Gaza, and the Israelis are expecting Germany to speak louder against what Hamas did on the 7th of October. So both sides are disappointed. I think that it is connected, one, obviously, to the past and the history of Germany, and the fact that today, even before the 7th of October, not mentioning after the 7th of October, you cannot criticize any step done by Israeli government without being accused of being anti-Semitist. And this is, in a way, this is a big success to the right-wing policy and the supporters of Netanyahu and his government, that are able to frame every criticism in Germany to be anti-Semitism. And as far as I can judge, judgment is a bad word. As far as I can see from my perspective, and again, I know it's a bit unpolite to say that, but as far as I see it, every man of publicity or woman of publicity is hesitating to say clearly what they thought before 7th of October or what they think today after 7th of October is worth criticizing in the Israeli government policy, because they are worried to be accused of being anti-Jewish or anti-Semitist. And after 7th of October, things are getting even more difficult, because you have these expectations from the Israelis who want Germany to stand 100% on the side of Israel. And I think there's no need to, Germany doesn't have to prove anymore after 75 years that Germany feels responsibility for the safety of Israel. But I think the safety of Israel is not just how much weapon we have and how many billions of euro you pay with your taxes to give Israel submarines that are equipped like only Russia and the United States submarines are equipped, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. So the question is whether the responsibility is just the responsibility for having Israel as much weapon as possible, or does it mean also some sort of responsibility of what kind of society exists in Israel? Does the existence of Israel is only a matter of power, or do we have also another level of necessary to exist as a free democratic society? So this is like in very short view of my thoughts on a very large question. What is standing behind so-called the silence from Germany?
Thank you, Jair, for being clear about your perspective, as you called it. For now, I would like to go back to you, Rana, and trying to avoid the word planning, but how are you looking ahead at the movement? What are the next actions you're going to say? Yeah, you said you want to advocate for solutions, for a political solution. You need the politicians also to do something, but there are a lot of things you are doing also as a movement to have the next steps in this direction, to have to bring about some change. So what can be these steps you're going to take in the upcoming weeks or months?
Well, yes, as Yair said, like the word planning, it shouldn't be in our dictionary, because living here, we have realized that it's very difficult to plan ahead, because things just come up and they are unexpected, and things can happen at any time and like turn the situation upside down. But as a movement and as a Combatants for Peace, we haven't stopped working even since October 7th. We continue to do what we do. And we know there are more challenges and more obstacles for our work, but we try to find a way to still do what we have planned for. And we know things that will not be the same after October 7th. So many things have changed, and even like our strategy have changed, and our programs have changed, things that we need to include and like in our work because of the situation right now and what's happening. And in the beginning, what we have been doing is after October 7th is taking care of our community and continue these kind of joint meetings, whether it was in the beginning over Zoom for every week, because we needed a space like to have these conversations, no matter how difficult they were. And recently we started again to meet in person, despite the challenges that we don't find an actual place that can host us as a joint community. So that's also challenging. So we can only meet in basically in our office, which is also a small space that can hold a small number. But just 2 weeks ago, we had a seminar where we had 60 people in our office, and it was cozy. It was it was heartwarming, and we hope to continue doing even doing that, even if there are no places that can host us. But it's very important to still meet and talk and plan for the next ways. For our educational programs, they continue to run, but online, because it's also difficult to meet. For our Palestinian educational programs, because we have many participants from different parts of the West Bank, from Nablus, Jenin, and Tulkarem, Bethlehem, Hebron. It's very unsafe for these students to come, like, for example, to Bethlehem because of the settler violence on the roads and the situation at all, and the checkpoints that have been imposed, like recently. So it's a matter, like, it's a big responsibility. So that's why we continue to do this kind of meetings online. And right now we're focusing a lot on our advocacy campaigns and trying to raise awareness and raise our voices and to demand for a ceasefire and an end to this violence. And we have been trying also to reach to the international community, whether through these international webinars where we can speak to people and share our vision, and also through meeting with different political leaders and organizations, also to be involved in this pushing forward into a political solution. And we're planning ahead for our annual ceremonies. We have the joint memorial ceremony coming up in May, and also our joint Nakba remembrance ceremony also in May. They have 3 days difference between them. We don't know yet how they will look like, but we know that it will be conducted no matter how, because we know we had this experience before also with COVID. We also changed all of our events to online streaming. So we have this experience, so we know we can do it, but we still have to see how the situation would look like. And something that you mentioned before about the numbers, I'm just happy to share that last year when we had our memorial ceremony, we had 15,000 people attending the ceremony in person in a park in Tel Aviv, Palestinians and Israelis. So that was very, very powerful. And we had over 200,000 people watching the online streaming of the event. So I feel like even if we don't see the numbers, but we know so many people are following us and supporting us and want to be part of this movement of changing the history and changing this reality and creating peace for this region. So we hope for better days for everyone and for also like a better future for the next generation. And we continue to do what we have to do until things change.
Thank you. I can only underline that this ceremony always sends a really powerful message to everyone. Maybe you can just explain briefly what it looks like to those who don't know about it.
So our memorial ceremony takes place every year on Memorial Day, which is a sacred day in Israel, which in Israel, they remember the victims of the conflict. And usually the traditional way is remembering the victims like only in Israel, but we do it in an alternative way. And we grieve the loss of victims of the conflict from both sides, Israelis and Palestinians. So we actually do the ceremony on the same day of the Memorial Day. And it's very controversial event in Israel, but we have been doing it for the last 17 years. And it started as a small ceremony with 700 people in a small hall in Tel Aviv, and it has been growing over the years. So as I mentioned last year, we had 15,000 people sitting together and listening to bereaved families who have lost loved ones because of this ongoing conflict and violence. And we feel this year, because of what's happening and the war on Gaza, so many people have lost loved ones. And we feel it's very important even to conduct it this year, even if the circumstances are very difficult. And Yeah, it's like we do it in cooperation with the Families Forum, which is Bereaved Families Forum. And we hear in the ceremony the personal experience of bereaved families, Palestinians and Israelis. We also have speeches from Palestinian and Israeli and some musical performances. And it's being in the moment together and feeling the pain of the other and grieving together. And it's very powerful, and it just connects people together in a more human way. So we feel it's very important. And coming up afterwards, we have also the Nakba ceremony, in which we remember the events of 1948 and the refugees that are still all around the globe. And currently what's happening in Gaza, we feel it's an ongoing Nakba, and it's kind of a second Nakba for Palestinians. The displacement of people, losing their properties, losing their loved ones. Also with this humanitarian crisis right now in Gaza, it's very difficult, and we need to shed light on that as well during the ceremonies. So hopefully, yeah, things will change, but all these innocent lives are in our memory and in our thoughts and prayers.
Thank you, Rana. And if I may, I would encourage all of you who are with us today, you can like join the live stream of these two events. But what you could also do is simply host a small event in your community and watch the screening together and speak about it in the afternoon. I think this is something where you can really get people involved in what Combatants for Peace is about, and get the message. You can easily, and maybe we can share in that, simply subscribe to their newsletter. And if you don't want to say it, I can say it. You can donate, because we really need to see this movement growing and in these days. Yeah. And as time is moving on, this will be almost my last words. And I just want to give you, the two of you, and Jair, maybe you first, the chance to share one or two last sentences before we hand over for the closure. Jair.
Yes, I think it's very difficult to find and to talk about hope in these days, but it's also very important. And I think this is the bloodiest period in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I don't have to mention the level of trauma and the level of horror that the attack on the 7th October had imposed on the Israeli society, and I think worldwide. And we are talking about a horrific number of approximately 25,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza in 3 months. A very large number of that is 100% people who are not involved in the attack, innocent men, innocent women, and innocent children. But maybe because this is the most horrific time of 120 years of conflict between Palestinians and Jews in Israel and in Palestine, there is maybe also a chance that it will push people to the understanding that there is no way we can put an end to that by using more violence to prevent the other side from using violence against us. It just never works. It never worked in any other part of the world, and it's not going to work here. And I really believe that one day people will realize that. Like in any other conflict around the world that was solved, even though people had lost hope, I'm sure will be the case here one day. The question only is when and how long we will have to continue the way we were walking until now before enough people on both sides realize that the other way need to be tried seriously, honestly. So maybe we can see some hope that because it has been such a disaster, such a tragedy, maybe this is a necessary stage that we had to go through in order to pull ourselves together and take responsibility of what is going on here and change the course of the events.
Thank you for these words. Rana, is there anything you want to add from what you said at last?
I just want to thank you for organizing this event. It was very powerful and inspiring. So thank you for everyone who made this possible. And I just want to say that we can take, we learn not to take our togetherness for granted. And we know we have to work through many obstacles and to keep our teams united and not to let our grief and pain overwhelm us. And when Combatants for Peace was created, it was right after the Second Intifada. And it took a lot of courage and braveness of many few fighters to create something that is so powerful and so inspiring. And now we are looking back to our roots, and we ask people for the same bravery and commitment to nonviolence so that we can carry it also forward. And we invite you to keep up the international pressure to insist on a political solution to end this conflict and to stop the bloodshed now. And we know that there is no military solution here and nothing to gain from this empty loss of life. So thank you again for taking your time to be with us here tonight.
Thank you, Yair. Thank you, Rana, from my side. It was really good and inspiring to speak to you. And I